Good evening. Let's get going. So, good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the council's YouTube channel, and I welcome viewers joining us online. Please can I ask members and officers to ensure that mobile phones are either set to silent or switched off for the duration of the meeting. No one in the gallery. I'd like to remind members of the procedure for tonight's agenda. Should members wish to amend, remove or add additional recommendations or requests as part of our debate, then they need to state and propose their recommendation at the appropriate time and seek a seconder to then confirm the recommendation. Members will then debate and vote on the additional or amended recommendations as necessary. I ask all members to be mindful of this when preparing questions and comments to ensure that each item, there's only one item, receives appropriate attention, so we're okay on that front tonight. So we'll now move to the first item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Callum.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Fedorovich and Councillor Lavelle-Moore, with Councillor Dell and Councillor Munday as substitutes for tonight.
That's great, thank you, and welcome Councillor Dell and Councillor Munday. Just on the apologies, if I can just highlight to everyone the importance of sending apologies, please, to myself and to Callum. That goes for the question strategy meeting and for the live meetings for tonight. If we can just ensure everyone does that, please, going forward. Thank you. We'll move on then to agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting.
Sorry to interrupt. Is the calendar acceptance, non-acceptance not enough for the purpose of letting the committee know whether you're attending? Because obviously it's got all the attendance in those calendar invites. I appreciate protocol is normally to let I believe on the last meeting I did let the committee administrator know, but are you saying that isn't good enough?
No, if you do that, that's absolutely fine. That comes through, and we had your apologies for the question strategy meeting, but other members haven't been doing that. So it's just a generic. But no, we received your apologies, so thank you for that. It's not a problem at all. So we'll move on to agenda item 2 then. Minutes of the meeting held on 23rd of September. Are members happy for me to sign off the minutes from this meeting? Any
Chair,
questions?
Sorry, just a point of personal clarity. I haven't seen the minutes from the last meeting because I wasn't obviously part of the meeting. Do I vote on this or?
No, if you just abstain because you weren't here, you can't comment on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris? So if you're happy for me to sign off the minutes as a true and accurate record, I'll seek a proposer, Councillor Gibbs, and a seconder. Councillor Baker, thank you, appreciate that. Okay, all those in favour of the minutes being signed off? You weren't there? Unanimous. That's brilliant, thank you. So, agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations that they wish to make at this time? Councillor Dell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my declaring interest, I work for Brightways, who have contracts with the council and work in active travel. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Nothing? Okay, thank you. So, we move on to the one item. Agenda item 4, Highway Network Management Plan. If I can invite Graham and Jonathan, one or the other, to introduce the item for us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Hi. We're really pleased to bring this item to you, the Highways Network Management Plan. We've been operating with the network management plan that the council's currently got in place, but it's been around for some years now. It was originally a county council document, which we then incorporated into being a North Northamptonshire document. But really, in all honesty and transparency at the time. It was just a case of changing a logo at that point, whereas in this occasion, we've been right the way through the whole plan and updated it to reflect changes in use of the network really over time. There's certain things that we'll point out in a minute, which obviously didn't exist when the first document was created. The network management plan is part of a suite of documents that we are bringing forward through scrutiny and on to executive. You may well remember earlier this year we brought through the highways asset management plan, which was discussed here and then went on to executive. And this is another part of that suite of documents. The other one we've talked about previously is the local transport plan. There is a helpful, I hope it's helpful, scheme of the various different documents in that suite on page 3 of the network management plan that you've got in front of you, and it just lays out where they all kind of fit together. The network management plan that you've got in front of you this evening is one of the higher level documents. So it's quite general in nature. It doesn't go into the finer detail of how we manage a network, but it's hopefully a helpful guide. I find it a useful guide, to be honest. I refer to it myself in my working week, and I hope others do. It's a public document. It's on our website at the moment, and the final version that's agreed by executive would go on the website as well, so it can help residents understand our various different duties under the various legislation that we've mentioned here, and our general and our various legal roles as highways authority, transport authority, and others as well. It's a lengthy document because we do a great deal to manage the network. There's many different considerations we need to make when managing a network. Obviously, we have residents who request changes to the network, whether that's a drop curb is a common example, or whether it's something more significant with a developer making significant changes. So we range from the small to the really quite significant, and in all those situations, we've got to consider the impact that those changes would have, both legally but also just practically and operationally sometimes. So it's a good guide for people to start with, to understand how we might respond to their request to changes to that network. Some of the changes that we've outlined there relate to around enforcement, dealing with highway obstructions and encroachments. These are things that shouldn't be placed in the highway, that have been placed in the highway without permission. Obviously, people can request changes and licenses to make changes, but some people don't, and therefore, obviously, we look to take appropriate enforcement action where it's proportionate and appropriate to do so. The advent and the introduction of electric vehicles, obviously, has changed significantly since the original network management plan was created. So this one tries to reflect to that, and that's a moving feast all the time. So we're learning from best practice up and down the country. We've got some really good initiatives coming forward with electric vehicle charging, which will be rolled out next year, which is really exciting. Lots of funding from government and new initiatives that we're introducing. So we've tried to capture that as well. And also a big change since the plan was written in the county days is, of course, we're now a unitary authority. So there's an opportunity to find synergy between the various different services that we have within the one authority, the obvious ones being street cleaning, for example, grounds maintenance when it comes to highway verges, but there are many others as well, which we're always looking to strengthen that relationship between the different teams so that we're obviously getting best value for money, but operationally we're just doing the sensible thing by joining those up. There's a great deal in this plan, so very happy to answer questions on any element that you want. Jonathan's with me. Jonathan's led on this piece of work with his colleagues. And I should say, on that last point, in terms of working with other teams, Jonathan's done a very good job at liaising with those other teams. So there's sections of it where obviously we've gone to speak to planning colleagues, we've spoken to grounds maintenance, we've spoken to street cleaning to make sure that they understand what's in the network management plan, how they contribute towards it, and how we want to work with them across the network. So Jonathan's led that on that piece of work, and we're very happy to take any questions or comments that the committee might have before we take this on to scrutiny in the new year. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Graham. I will open this up to anyone who has any comments, questions or concerns. Who wants to go? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to make a start, and thank you, Graham, for that introduction and also for submitting the plan, and also to Jonathan. It is useful as a guide. It is very general. It sort of provides a pathway through the various subject matters without getting into detail. I must admit I struggled a little bit with it from that perspective, and I was constantly asking myself questions about the detail. Where are the KPIs on this, and how does this strategy act as either an umbrella strategy or feed into and align with a lot of the other strategies that are mentioned, and indeed some that aren't mentioned. I've actually got lots of questions, but I'll start with one. And that is in the context of the references to sustainability and the reduction of environmental impact. There's lots of references in there to various powers and tools to promote modal shift towards more environmentally sustainable modes of transport, but I didn't actually see any particular plan to identify how that is happening. I didn't see any reference to KPIs. I didn't see what progress is being made on that front. That may be in other sector-specific plans, such as the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, but I was expecting this plan to take a bit of an overarching, holistic approach in that regard as a sort of umbrella plan, but even when I read it, I still didn't get that impression on this particular topic. One example in particular struck me was the lack of referencing to the Greenway project in this regard. It really is only referenced on page 16 of the plan, and I was quite surprised at that, given that the objectives of the Greenway project fits with one of the overall strategic objectives of this plan, to promote active travel and reduce environmental impact. Jonathan, as you're aware, as well, the Greenway is looking at the possibility of a quiet lane designation on the Braybrook to Desborough leg. There is references to quiet lane designation in this plan. And whilst we recognise the criteria that needs to be met in that regard, and I think it's through the network management plan, this plan, in terms of its tone on quiet lane designation, didn't seem to be particularly positive, if I'm honest. And yet that one quiet lane designation on that one leg of the Greenway project could bring real tangible benefits. So if it's possible, I think the plan could benefit from greater referencing to the Greenway project. And I specifically think that page 74 in respect to quiet lane designation could be reworded to be more positive in tone. And I think as well it could usefully reference the Greenway project so that there's a clear link between supporting Greenway network development and quiet lane designation. I'll leave it there for the moment because that's quite a bit just on that one particular topic. But I think that's what I'd like to see in relation to this constant referencing throughout of sustainability, reduction of environmental impact. But I didn't see a lot of linkage with one of the real key policies and strategies that we're looking at in this council in that regard, and that's the Greenway project. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for those comments. That's really helpful. So I'll talk to some of those as best I can, and Jonathan's welcome to come in as well if you like. So yeah, it is confusing, if you like, all the different plans and how they link together. So around active travel and sustainable travel, for instance, you're quite right. That is an ambition, clearly, of the council in a number of different ways. The vision and the ambition, and therefore any targets that might be linked to that, would sit in the local transport plan. So when the local transport comes forward for consultation, there'll be some proposals around, these we think, this is what we think the objectives should be, this is what the priorities should be, do you agree, population? And our communities will come back and either disagree or agree, and it will shape what the objectives are for the local transport plan. And then the local transport plan will set what are considered to be reasonable targets over a long period of time, of course, around sustainable travel. You'd also expect it around public transport and everything. So that's where that would sit, the detail of that. And you're right, the route plans sit within the LC whips, which are referenced in here, of course. So again, this document as a guide is pointing people to other places to go and read more about the detail. So in the same way with the Greenway strategy, what we wouldn't want to do is start outlining the Greenway strategy in this document because it sits somewhere else. There's a different board for that, as you quite rightly reference, and there's a different process there for developing out the Greenway strategy. So what this local network plan says, or network management plan says, is saying the Greenway strategy exists, it's important to the council, you can read more about it in the Greenway strategy. What I would then also expect is if the quiet lanes are to be part of the Greenway, therefore I would expect the Greenway strategy to talk about how quiet lanes can help to contribute to delivering the Greenway strategy in the Greenway strategy. So it could say, in the Greenway strategy, it could say, quiet lanes are one of the ways in which we can further develop this strategy, and it could even say that the The council has an approach to quiet lanes, which is outlined in the network management plan, and we will work with various different services across the council to implement quiet lanes, which can therefore deliver the Greenway strategy. So I'd see it working that way. I take your point on the tone of the quiet lanes bit, and I think we can look at that. So I think we can address it. But I hope that starts to explain how the various different pieces knit together.
Thank you, Graham. It does. I would just say, so I wouldn't expect that this strategy would basically replicate what the objectives are and the strategy of the Greenway project. Because it is some sort of overarching general guide, though, I would expect it to provide greater linkage to the Greenway strategy, where you're talking about sustainability and reduction of environmental impact. I don't think that's something that should be particularly controversial. But again, I think you can also provide that linkage in here with quiet lane designation, because quiet lane designation will support the development of the Greenway network. So I think, yes, that can be in the Greenway strategy, but I think if you're going to have that cross-linkage across policies, you should also have it in here, and have it in here where it references quiet lane designation. And I think that's where that could be reworded as well as to change some of the negativity towards the end of that section on quiet lane designation. Thank you.
Councillor Dell.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of points related that I'll start with. So this strategy, it's forward-looking, presumably, but it doesn't seem to mention micro-mobility and specifically e-scooters. Now, at the moment, obviously, privately owned e-scooters are illegal, but at some point in the future, there's going to be legislation, and however they work it out, and they will become legal. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, we do have the VOI rental schemes at the moment, but it seems strange that there was no mention of e-scooters in here, or even micro-mobility, which sort of encompasses more than just e-scooters. On that point about quiet lanes, I was also, and LC whips and things, I was also expecting to see something about potential for compulsory purchase. I know that happens with roads, but if there's, say, a greenway that needs linking up across a farmer's field or something, and there's absolutely no way of that person selling, is there an option for compulsory purchase for things like sustainable travel routes? That's a couple of questions for a start.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's useful. So I think your point on micromobility is a good one. If it's not in there, then I think we should reference it. Again, we wouldn't in this document explain what our strategy and approach would be. What we would be saying is that essentially that it's a fairly new form of transport, and there are ways in which we can support it. And a lot of those ways are then outlined in various different parts, whether it's a cycleway, whether it's appropriate drop curbage, where the various different things that can be used within the network management plan in order to make it easier to use micro mobility. So we can definitely think about how we reference that appropriately. Again, compulsory purchase orders, you're quite right, they are a tool in which we can use to unlock routes or plans, or whatever it might be. I haven't done a search to check, but I take your word for it. If they're not mentioned in there, we can refer to them. Again, we wouldn't be saying a huge amount, but we would say that they are another tool in which, and this is what this is trying to do, is outline the various powers, various tools, various practicalities we can use to deliver a certain outcome. That outcome isn't defined in here. The outcome is defined somewhere else. But we can use this to deliver that. So we can talk again about how CPOs can help with that. That's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Gibbs.
Thank you, Chair. I want to ask a few questions about the EV information in the agenda, if that's okay. So 12.1.1, it mentions the plan's going to provide 158 sockets and 6 rapid chargers. Then there's a link to an NNC website which lists where those chargers are. Is this plan, are the chargers referenced in this plan in addition to the ones already on this street, or on the streets on this website, or would it be other places in addition to the ones that are already on there?
So forgive me, I lost your reference there, but pardon me. Thank you. That's what I've got. That's helpful. Thank you. So yeah, in the electric vehicle strategy that's been approved, there are targets within that strategy to achieve a certain outcome. So they would be in addition to what we've got already. what we've got already has been delivered through the Believe programme, whereas the other ones are still to come as part of our electric vehicle charging strategy and the Levi funding that we've got. Some more to come.
Okay, thank you. It also mentions only 6 rapid chargers out of the 158. Why only 6 and not significantly more? I think one of the issues with EVs at the moment is the lack of rapid chargers that there are available. Because if you're going to use just a standard charger and you have an EV and the charger's not near your house and you don't have the ability to put a charge point on your house, you know, you're looking at leaving your car some distance away from your home, potentially overnight as well, which can be an off-putting thing to do for someone considering getting an EV.
Yeah, absolutely. I take your point. I would have to refer back to the EV strategy to see what the plans are for rapid charging as part of that. You're quite right. We're aware of the various different mix of charging points required. Some on street, of course, some in car parks that we own, some in private car parks and shopping centres, and we're looking to support all of those, and of course of different speeds as well, which are constantly changing as we go forward. So I'd have to refer back to the electric vehicle strategy to see what we've set out in terms of our ambitions for rapid charging. I don't have that here. But again, what we would aim to do is not necessarily we wouldn't set it out in the network management plan. We would refer to the electric vehicle charging strategy, right, which has previously come through this route for approval and is what we're aiming to roll out through the Levi funding.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Councillor Monday.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is around enforcement. So the report highlights stronger enforcement around obstructions and encroachments, which is an area that, for myself personally, generates significant volume of resident complaints and frustration. I can think of a particular example, Penderwood Road in Wellingborough. Enforcement language appears across many different policy documents, but without always translating into visible change. So what has materially changed in enforcement powers practice compared with the previous NCC plan, and how would residents notice a difference in how quickly and consistently obstructions are dealt with?
Yeah, I can pick that one up, Chair, thanks. So it's a good point, really good point, and it was something that I noticed when we first started reviewing this plan. It was enforcement was split in the previous plan across various sections. It was not all together, and there were inconsistencies around the language that was used. And what we've tried to do within the plan now is that the main things that we would be enforcing are obstructions and encroachments on the highway. We've brought them all together within the document, so they're all in the same place, so you can follow the various elements. And we've outlined the actual process and timescales a lot more clearly. We've also done some work with the corporately to make sure that these issues are reflected in the corporate enforcement policy. So people will be able to look at this and say, right, when you have an overgrown hedge, this is what the council will do. It will contact the landowner, ask them to do it themselves. If they don't do it within a time period, that will be followed up with something else, and then ultimately we can do the work ourselves and charge them back. So the previous plan did not detail it in that way. We've tried to make it perfectly clear for all of the elements that we could identify how they would get dealt with. So that was a big change because the previous document didn't do that.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. And if I could just go back to electric vehicles, and just as a follow-on to the question from Councillor Gibbs, and Graham, you may have answered this actually, but I'm not entirely sure. But I was cross-referencing the figures in section 12 with the electric vehicle infrastructure strategy that provides the link there. And that strategy itself states that at the end of March 2024, at least government figures at that time indicated there were 229 publicly available electric vehicle charging points in North Northants, with a forecast need for 660 in the area by 2025 and then 1,770 by 2030. But I couldn't see anything in this plan as to whether that 660 forecast figure for 2025 had been met, or whether we're on track to meet the 1,770 figure for 2030, or how the 80% target figure in the plan of all homes without off-street parking to have access of a public charging point, at least within 250 metres, by 2029 aligns with those targets in the infrastructure plan. So that just all felt a bit confusing to me, but maybe there was some information that's missing. So if you could perhaps answer that, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Sure, through you, Chair. I'll certainly take, I won't be able to answer it all now, but I can take it away, check that we're aligned in terms of what the network management plan is saying and the strategy is saying, and certainly we can also provide an update, if you like, on how we're doing with the strategy anyway separately, which is again is not, I suppose, what we're trying to do is similar to previous responses. What we're trying to do is not have the network management plan being, if you like, responsible for the delivery of everything. You know, the electric vehicle charging strategy is responsible for achieving the ambition set out in that strategy. This document is referring to it, saying, you know, the council's made a commitment to it through our highways powers, therefore we will do what we can to deliver that strategy. But we can get you an updated figure on where we are with the EV strategy in itself, that's fine. And again, you know, the committee might like an update on that anyway. That could be an item for a future committee if you wanted to. You can review the progress of the strategy on one of your future agendas, the electric vehicle charging strategy if you wanted to.
Councillor Mundy.
Thank you. Just on the EV thing, just thinking about Northampton in general, there are a large number of very narrow streets with cars parked either side. It's more often than not an issue driving down because there's nowhere to pull in to allow another car coming the opposite way to pass. So I'm just thinking in terms of those narrow streets and about poorly placed infrastructure creating safety issues, particularly on narrow streets or older estates. So does the plan ensure EV charging locations are selected in a way that protects the paths and footway access, safety and flexibility rather than sort of solving one problem and creating another?
Yes, in short, yes. So again, it's similar to other examples, really. We have the ambitions and the strategy, and the network management plan outlines some of the tools in which we will use to deliver that strategy and some of the considerations, therefore. So regardless of what we're placing in the highways network, in this case it's an electric vehicle charger, but regardless of what it is, we have certain considerations to make. A tree, different considerations, cycle racks, different considerations, but ultimately one of them will be, can you still drive down the road and access it? What tools can we use, therefore, to create space? Is it more restrictions, appropriate restrictions, single yellow lines, double yellow lines? Then, of course, you need the legislation in place, regulations in place to actually enable it to happen and to, therefore, enforce it. So the network management plan explains all those tools that we can use to then put infrastructure into the network, in this case, for an electric vehicle charging point. For those charging points, it goes through the traffic regulation orders process. So there's 2 stages of consultation that there, again, TROs are outlined in the plan, I'd like to think. So it goes through the consultation process. Obviously, highways engineers are involved, but obviously resident feedback's involved to inform whether or not it's appropriate to put that kind of infrastructure in that particular location, or whether there's going to be unintended consequences, just like when we put yellow lines in as well.
Okay, Councillor Davis.
My question is a little bit around the actual policy. It's very long and heavy. It's like 80 plus pages. Yeah. Is it accessible to members, parish councils, developers, the public? And it reads a lot like a technical manual rather than a policy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It's not a policy as such. And we've tried to make it accessible in terms of the language. Tried to remove as much as we can sort of technical language from it, legislative language from it, to make it as easy to read as possible. If there's bits where you think that we haven't managed to achieve that, then let us know. It's quite a difficult balance to be accurate in legislative terms, but also accessible and open to those lay people who might take an interest in it. It will all be on our website. We'll work with the web team. It's a huge document, as you quite rightly point out. It's actually shorter than the last one, isn't it? Because you've managed to...
Nearly 200 pages.
I mean,
the last
maybe
one's
maybe if there was like a 10-page summary, this is the crux of it. But if you want to go and read the manual, the whole encompassing 3-hour read, it's available here.
Yeah, so I think we can do that on the website, because there are certain, and we do that to a certain extent already, because there's certain sections that people tend to be more interested in than others. Drop curbs as being one I mentioned earlier. So what happens is when somebody's interested in drop curb, they obviously don't tend to go to our website and say, I know, I need to look at the network management manual plan rather. They say, I want to know about drop curbs. So they either search Google for North Northants drop curb, or they go to our search engine in the website itself, or they might navigate to the highways page and find it that way. So we will end up taking sections of these out which are of particular interest to people, and then changing the language further and explaining what you do next if you want to apply for a drop curb, which is what we do already.
Which is a really quite straightforward process. I
Yeah.
did it. You had 10 providers, and when they come in
That's
with their
right.
prices, I still don't have drop curb because it's massive. Prices are huge.
Yeah, it's never cheap to work in the public domain, because you've got many considerations to make. But yeah, it's there. Another example is a request for parking restrictions, for instance. So we have a separate page that explains what the process you'd follow in order to request additional parking restrictions on your road. So that originates in the network management plan, but then we make it accessible on a page on our website that people can hopefully find and use.
It's the cost that deters people, so they often don't follow these things through.
Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just thank you, Graham. I think it would be useful if the search function on the website actually worked. It would be then people would be able to find these documents. That might be something that I know it's not for this scrutiny committee, but it would be useful if it did work and people were able to find these policies and plans and sections far more easily, because it isn't easy to find anything on the website, I must say. It's even 4.5 or whatever years down the line, it's still not easy. Actually, my point is about street lighting. So it's section 4.5, and it highlights the fact that obviously North Northants Council are responsible for the street lighting that it inherited, but it clearly states that some of the street lighting is not the responsibility of North Northants Council, it's the responsibility of some of the local towns and parishes. Obviously, there's a great disparity there, because NNC has responsibility to maintain the street lighting and have consistency across the areas in which it has that responsibility. But when you're talking about local towns and parishes who have to preset separately to maintain their local street lighting, where's the consistency across North Northants in ensuring that we've got adequate street lighting throughout the whole of North Northants? And what responsibility should we as a leading authority have in that respect, and support local town and parishes in being able to upgrade their street lighting as and when they need to? For instance, I have one of my local villages whose annual precept is about £7,000, and the cost for their upgrade in street lighting is £15,000 as a one-off hit. How on earth are they supposed to be able to fund that sort of that cost? Luckily, I've managed to help them with a grant funding that's come along, but there are lots of local town and parishes out there that won't be able to do these. But it's not just about street lighting. You've also got the verge cutting and all those sort of things as well. So I suppose my question is really, if we as a local authority are sort of the leading light in street lighting, trying to ensure that we have adequate street lighting throughout, what support can we give town and parishes who have that responsibility? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So you're quite right. There are differences in terms of how street lighting is provided across Northamptonshire. And as the network management plan explains, North Northants are not always the lighting authority. That can fall to the town and parish council. There's no statutory requirement to provide street lighting. So it's a choice of a local authority whether they provide that. Obviously, there's many benefits to that. We all know that. But it is a choice to do so. So some towns and villages, either in North Northamptonshire or anywhere else in the country, will or will not have lighting. And sometimes that's provided by the Highways Authority. Sometimes it's provided by the town or parish council. So there's a certain choice there. The plan, obviously, the network management plan, obviously doesn't set out a policy or approach to achieving consistency. That will be dealt with by somewhere else in the council. And obviously we're working through that with the verges, for instance. We're engaging with the town and parishes around the verges as well, because there was disparity around that. So we're working with them to try and get consistency in that area. So we'll continue to work with town and parishes to see how we can support and operate. But no, they are responsible. The towns and parishes who have their own street lighting are responsible for it. So they would need to think about how they maintain that. And pay for it, because it's their asset, it's their responsibility.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. Just going on to drainage on 410. It seems like, well, from reading it, it's very complicated about who looks after which parts of drainage. But my question's around pollution from roadways, or pollutants. So you get lots of pollutants from, for example, tyre wear, brake dust, lots of carcinogens. They're on the road, it rains, and then the rain washes it downstream. Whose responsibility is it? Is it where those pollutants end up, or is it where it started in the first place? If you've got some clarity on that.
Yes, provide some clarity, not all of it, but some clarity. So we are responsible, you're quite right, in terms of it's complicated. We are responsible clearly for a great deal of drainage assets, but not all of it. Sometimes it's the Anglian water in our particular location. Sometimes we have the old combined sewer situation where the highway drain is still going into the sewer, which is sort of a legacy historic arrangement where we find that in some situations we divide it out again. Sometimes we don't, because you can leave it in certain circumstances. Ultimately, well, actually, I was going to say ultimately, but I bet it's far more complicated than this. We would certainly have a responsibility for ensuring that our drainage network is well maintained, and therefore anything that travels through the drainage network is going where it should go. I know that I've been very vague, but that will depend very much on the various different circumstances in terms of where it has been directed. Sometimes it will go into another drain, which may or may not be our responsibility. Sometimes it will go into an open water course, etc. So it will depend on whose responsibility it is and what is considered to be a pollution event and who therefore is responsible for that pollution event. Without looking at individual circumstances, it will get complicated.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. We obviously the gullies themselves capture the non-suspended items, if you like. So heavier material gets caught in the gully itself. So it's grit, detritus, everything else flows off the road into what most people call a drain. We call it a gully. Goes into the gully. It would fall down into the hopper at the bottom, and the water flows away. That is what the gully crews are emptying when they go along. So they are then sucking out what is sitting at the bottom of that. So an awful lot of material can fall into a gully without entering the watercourse. And if it's heavy enough, it will sit there, and then we will come and suck it out and then dispose of that responsibly. So just because it goes into gully doesn't mean it's gone all the way through the drainage system. It could, if it's got any weight to it, it will be sitting there waiting for us to come and pull it out later.
Can I add a follow-up? You said that you dispose of it responsibly. Have you got any detail on where that, because that contains like zinc and cadmium, copper, all kinds of horrible stuff. Where does that end up?
I don't know off the top of my head in terms of I don't know what disposal route it takes, but you're right, we need to consider whether or not that is being deemed hazardous material or not within the regulations, and the regulations set by the Environment Agency.
Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of questions on fly posting, but can I just sort of finish where I was going on electric vehicles? If the committee agrees that they'd like you to come back at a future point and just provide progress in relation to those figures that I mentioned earlier, I think it'd be also beneficial for this committee if you could provide some progress at the same time on the measures that are being taken to make the transition to electric vehicles more attractive. And I say that because there's various measures that are prescribed in the electric vehicle infrastructure strategy, but also having liaised with some of my colleagues back in my ward, their concern is actually more in relation to the disparity in pricing in relation to at-home and public electric vehicle charging. And I don't have an electric vehicle, but I know that some other councillors around here too. And I was shocked to hear that the disparity is huge. And one colleague told me that at home they can charge for 9 pence kilowatt an hour, but that can be anything up to 89 pence a kilowatt per hour, which is massive. And that's making it, quite frankly, off-putting rather than making it attractive to make that transition. So I think if you're coming back with those figures at a future committee, I think if you could provide some sort of update on the measures that are being taken to attract people to that transition, I think that'd be really beneficial. Moving on to fly posting, and that's page 37 of the plan. And talking of plans, I was wondering if there's a specific plan to identify and remove fly posting, as it's called, and signage that just goes beyond residents and or councillors reporting fly posting to waste or highways or your highways liaison officer. There was one example in Wellingborough that cuts across Councillor Monday's ward and my own ward in respect of a very large banner advertising a circus on the barriers at Northampton Road that was there for months and months and months and months. And yet, and to be fair to them, they would have been completely oblivious to it. An NNC waste team was driving past that banner probably 5 days a week at best. Now, that's no criticism of them, because they probably weren't aware that that should have been removed, or it was their responsibility. But I'm wondering if there's some sort of plan in place in the waste team to ensure that those examples and fly posting are removed, or is it just down to residents and councillors to report that? And who do we report that to? In addition to that, and it's not particularly mentioned in the report, there's a large amount of highways signage just left unattended on our roads and verges, probably across most of our wards in Northamptonshire, after roadworks are done, whether that's signage or traffic cones, whatever. It's incredibly unsightly. And I'm sure it's the responsibility of the Highways Agency, but I'm wondering as well whether there's any sort of plan that exists in relation to the removal of that signage and any cross-coordination between Highways Waste and the Highways Agency in that regard. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baker. Thank you. Fly posting. So, firstly, please report it using the online reporting function on the website. So it's there. So please let us know if you see it out and about. Our environmental enforcement officers do engage with the organisations, individuals, companies that are putting the signage up, and where it's deemed appropriate and proportionate to do so, we will write to them and explain to them that they are breaking the law. And there's a great deal of legislation around it. Some of it is planning legislation, some of it is highways legislation, some of it is the environmental legislation. Our approach to it is outlined in our environmental enforcement policy, which is again another separate document, which has also come through this committee previously. But no, we do take action. Let's be honest and fair. There is more fly posting out there than we'll probably ever be able to keep up with, but we do take action on it, and I can speak to you a bit more about that outside of this meeting if that would be helpful. Do you want to handle highways signage, the disposed and left behind signage?
So in terms of the sort of left out signs after roadworks, that is an element that our streetworks team do pick up. So all of the utility companies and care who carry out work on the highway network do it through our permit scheme. And as part of that permit scheme, they are required, one of the conditions is they must clear the site properly when they have finished. And if they do not do that, they are not meeting their conditions and they can be penalised under that permit scheme. So I would suggest that anyone who sees signs left out after roadworks just lets us know via the online reporting tool, and we will be able to deal with that. And there are financial penalties to utility companies for doing so. So we can generate income out of it as well.
Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you. So obviously we've already discussed this as an extremely weighty document. And I would have thought that most of these issues that are within this document would be raised via the what it was Street Doctor Fix My Street, which personally I think we don't advertise enough. I think there should be far greater promotion of that. I can't remember when the last communication about Fix My Street was put out on social media. I think there should be a regular campaign so people are aware of everything that they can report on that system, because people don't, and they come straight to us councillors, or they go to the town and parish councils, whereas actually we'd be able to get far greater data if that was used and be able to fix problems far more quickly. One of the issues that I found with that online reporting, and it mentions in 3.2 about potholes, and I appreciate this isn't probably about potholes, but once they're reported and officers go out or contractors go out and highlight a pothole with whatever colour, white or yellow, residents think that's it. They think it's done, it's on the system. Yes, and it is on the system. The trouble is, if that pothole, for instance, has been highlighted for a repair in 6 months' time, that pothole isn't going to stay in that condition at all. That pothole is going to get worse. With it having lines around it, people don't think they need to continue to report it if the condition gets subsequently worse. And I've had this in my area where people have said, well, it's reported, it'll be fine. And yet I ended up with a pothole that was 13 centimetres deep, but wasn't supposed to be fixed for 6 months. So unless we keep promoting the Fix My Street and the reasons around it, and if the pothole is deteriorating or if the verges aren't getting cut or whatever, people aren't aware that just because it's got a line around it, it could deteriorate and it's not scheduled to be repaired for a considerable amount of time. And sometimes that is a long time. So I think that's something that needs addressing quite well. Promotion for Fix My Street really should be one of our key priorities. My second point is obviously on enforcement. So we have a lot of issues within this plan that would need enforcement. Can you assure us that you have the adequate resources to be able to deal with all of these issues that come forward? And is it worth bringing back some sort of data to this committee so that we can have a look at what is reported, how soon those things are being rectified? I think that would be useful as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Councillor. So yeah, I totally agree. It's really, really valuable when people report it through our highways online reporting tool, as we refer to it now, HORT. We certainly promote it a fair bit already. We can always promote it more. Totally agree. We can do that. Certainly members are reminded about it at least every month, because it's mentioned in the members' highlight report that you each get to your inboxes. And we certainly remind the town and parishes about it as well. And we welcome everybody's reporting of it, of incidents through the online tool, so we can look to see whether we can promote it more, because it is so valuable. So, yeah, separate to the network management plan, as is outlined in that schematic that I mentioned right at the beginning, we have the inspection manual and then therefore the intervention levels as well for potholes, and then they go into the priority 1s to 4s. We'll bring that through this committee as well next year. There's a plan to do that, and then take it on to executive for update and approval through that process. You're quite right in terms of once a pothole has been marked either in white or yellow, that means it's in the system and is being dealt with. When the inspector looks at a pothole and assesses it for repair, one of the considerations they're making is what's the likely deterioration rate of it, and therefore is it suitable for it to be a 1, 2, 3 or 4 in terms of how quickly we go back to do it. So they do consider that, clearly depending on the nature of the road, the quality of the road and the condition of it, and also the frequency of traffic on that road, high speed, high volume, they'll be making a judgment there. But yes, potholes can deteriorate, so it's useful to update us if it has been deteriorated. If it's on a road that it's inspected, say, once a month, it will be looked at during that inspection anyway, so the inspector will be keeping an eye on it, and if it reaches the next threshold, it would be bumped up to the next priority level. So it is a bit of a dynamic situation we're dealing with. But the first point is to report it, then we will inspect it. Yes, the yellow and white lines mean that we will get to it, and it will be scheduled appropriately in the priority order that we have.
Can I just come back on that, Chair, please? Great that if it's on a high usage road that it's re-inspected, but if it's not on a high usage road, it could not be looked at all for another 6 months and yet deteriorating. So, and from what I understand, and I could be wrong, correct me if I am, they're not reassessed. Even if they are marked for repair, and it's a 6 months, nobody's coming back out unless they're on a high volume traffic road. So, we do need to encourage people to keep reporting, and I think, the trouble is they are deteriorating and they're not being reassessed, and I think that is causing a problem, and I think we end up with more vehicles being damaged that could be stopped if people were aware that they need to keep reporting them. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Munday.
Thank you, Chair. Just back on the issue of electric vehicles again. I mentioned earlier about the narrow streets with restricted pedestrian access, and vehicles obviously being sometimes forced to park on the footpath to prevent blocking the road, especially larger vehicles. As we move closer towards the 2030 ban on new petrol and diesel vehicles, it's inevitable in my mind that we're going to see a significant increase on the road in electric vehicles, especially. So apologise if this is actually in there because I was only sent the information last night, but I can't see anything in the report that addresses what I assume will become a widespread and recurring issue, namely private EV charging cables trailing across footpaths. So this presents obvious risks and barriers for disabled people, wheelchair users, visually impaired residents, parents, etc. Particularly women pushing children in prams who may be forced onto the carriageway to pass these cables. If we think about those, a really long street with cars parked all the way up it, and every single car being an EV, you're going to have tons of cables across footpaths. So given the Council's public sector equality duty, the plan's stated commitment to pedestrian movement, accessibility, I'd expect this issue to be sort of explicit in the report and managed within the network management plan. I think the plan should clearly set out the Council's position on this, including how they're going to manage this going forward. Thank you.
I'll just jump in very quickly because obviously Councillor Munday is a substitute who didn't get the details later, but there is a section in there about coming next year, 2026, I think it was, under floor cabling for private residents to address exactly that situation. But I'll leave you to.
No, you're absolutely right. That's all I was going to say, really. But just to add to it, you're right. This is a national consideration. So we speak to our sector colleagues across other local authorities. We speak to the private sector who provide charging solutions about this, and we've spoken to a number of providers who provide solutions, cross pavement solutions, as we refer to them. There's a number of different options, and as the chair quite rightly says, we're very pleased that we are going to be launching a controlled trial. Controlled being we will think about the types of streets that we want to trial it in, so we have a variety. So it won't just be a case of anybody across all of Northamptonshire can have a go at this. We will want to be able to control the locations so that we can actually monitor the trial appropriately, but we will have a trial so that we can explore how these things work, both from an engineering and technical point of view, but also from a behavioural science point of view, as in people use the pavement for a lot of different reasons, some of them more able than others, so we need to think about the impact it has on those more vulnerable people. But it's a very interesting piece of work for us to be doing, and I'm really pleased that we've got the opportunity to do the trial, which is funded by government.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I appreciate we're flicking around a little bit here. So if I could go back to Jonathan in regards to the highways stuff that's left on site. So obviously we use a lot of subcontractors. There's two examples in my ward where it's the same subcontractor that's doing the work. And I'll give you the examples of both, which is one is on Lower Street. There's a number of reasons why that project's been going on for a significant amount of time. And then there's the Pitwell Bridge path to the green space. So the path to the greenway green space, there was a ton of stuff left. And it can't be that internally we are going out and doing the old-fashioned visual check of the work. So this contractor no doubt has some sort of process mechanism to tell the council we've done the work, job done. Now you would expect that we would subsequently send out a highways officer to go and check. Now either that highways officer's going out and checking the work and cannot see the, I won't use the expletive, has left all over the highway in terms of cones, signs, as in sign frames without the signs, sandbags. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So you mentioned, when you were talking about this, you mentioned, oh, well, we've got the authority to penalise them, fine them. Well, I guess my obvious question was, when was the last time we did that? And I bet I could put £1 on the table to say that it was a very long time ago. And this is where I think part of the problem is. I think we are either fining them or penalising them, and they are not bothered, or we're not. And I don't understand why we wouldn't, because they are our suppliers, and you know, in the private sector, you don't allow your suppliers to dictate how things are operated. So, and I know that this goes on. I was out today in the ward with the highways, the planning team, and we were walking along the verge, and there was cones in the hedgerow, you know, and I think part of the problem, we're expecting ward members stroke the public now to tell us where this stuff is, and you know, maybe we shouldn't be expecting that to happen. Maybe we should be taking a few little walks ourselves and going to inspect. I mean, not only did I see the bottom of cones in the hedgerow, but I saw a ton of litter. But it just goes on and on and on. And this examples of I'm sure we can all come up with these examples. So could you give me some sort of reassurance that moving forward a proper process is being put in place where subcontractors are not allowed to get away with this? Thank you.
Yeah, I can pick up both those points, and I do share your frustrations with these things. It's one of my pet hates as well, that when a roadwork site is completed, the site should be cleared, and not only does it make the highway look untidy, it can confuse and distract drivers when you've got signs for roads being closed or diversions that are left out when they're no longer needed. So it has a bit of a double whammy, really. Our permit scheme is robust. It does give us the tools to penalise people who overstay, and that's the phrase that we use, that if people overstay on their permit, and they can overstay on a permit by leaving equipment out, it's classed as an overstay, and there's a fine that a penalty that we can charge for that. We have a team of street works inspectors who police that. They obviously can't be everywhere all of the time. There's so many utility road works going on all the time, so sometimes we do rely on reports. But to cover off the sort of legacy issue where you might have things thrown in the hedge, we are inspecting through Kia our roads on a regular basis. So we have eyes out on the road on a regular basis, and I do take your point that we need to be more robust ourselves with the tools that we've got covering our network to pick these things up more proactively. So I will take that particular point away. I can get you some stats on the number of times that we've enforced and penalised utility companies for those issues. I'm happy to share those with you.
It would be useful to have some of those come through if you could. Yes, please. I'd appreciate that. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Gibbs and then we'll go to you.
Thank you, Chair. Similar comment to Councillor Howes, actually, but regarding fly tipping. My ward, and I think most of Kettering, has been inundated recently with a very specific fly posting individual, which has now gotten to the point where others have seen that as a legitimate marketing strategy, and others are copying the strategy and doing it themselves, which has left both myself and Councillor Eglin's ward just completely inundated. We get messages from residents almost every day. We get messages from our town and parish council in our ward almost on a weekly basis now. And I think the enforcement action so far has left people feeling a little bit disillusioned with the system, to the point where I have multiple videos that have been sent to me of people with hundreds of their own fly posting posters that they've taken down off of their own accord. They have tried to use the system, but I think the system is too slow in seeing any action in it. So I wonder if we could also get some stats and statistics on how many people have been fined for fly posting, and also some clarity on how long it takes from an initial report from a resident to action actually being taken on fly posting.
Chair, through you, absolutely. Fly tipping, fly posting, graffiti, all this anti-littering, all this antisocial behaviour is really detrimental to our area and doesn't align at all with what we're trying to achieve in terms of building a North Southamptonshire that we all want to see. So officers and members and the vast majority of residents are all aligned in the fact that this is unpleasant and unlawful activity. And certainly the teams are very active in clearing fly tipping and looking for evidence. We provide that information and stats to councils and to councillors in terms of how much activity we take in that area on a regular basis. And we've been very successful recently, particularly with fly tipping, around fining people but also taking them to court. And we're constantly doing that. In terms of fly posting, we've recently been doing a campaign in Kettering, so I'm sorry that you haven't seen the benefits of that, but I can give you one example that at the end of November, the team removed 120 Corex type, which is a plastic, corrugated plastic, signed 120 and 7 A-frames just in one day's operation in the Kettering area. So we are active in this way, and that was following us having written to those organisations to say, you remove them or we will remove them, and if you continue with this, we will fine you, because we can do that. So the team are actively engaging with all these antisocial behaviours that happen sadly in our towns and villages, and will continue to do so. Again, Chair, my enforcement team, my waste enforcement team, would be more than happy to come and provide either an informal briefing to members on all of these matters, as we have done previously. We've sat here when we brought the enforcement policy back through, and we brought the fly tipping and littering strategy earlier this year through this committee, and we're very happy to discuss it then, and we're very happy to come back again and discuss all of these points, which I appreciate as a lead into the network management plan, but the network management plan doesn't manage all of these elements. We're now tending to slip into other services that the council provides, which happen to be referenced here, but aren't necessarily the responsibility of the network management plan to actually to manage on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Graham. Just to clarify, I do appreciate the efforts of yourself and your team. We have noticed it, but unfortunately, because of that specific individual, it's kind of created a huge mess of that individual's own creation.
Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. So when we're talking about fly postering and things like that, one of the issues that I found a couple of years ago and is still happening now are these billboards that they have on the back of trailers that they attach to highways, street posts and things via chains. And when I've reported it, I've got a blank, oh, well, there's nothing we can do about it. We don't know who they are. Yet there's I was going to say really great phone number across the bottom of these trailers advertising their products or their wares or whatever. And yet we're getting well, we can't do anything about it. Well, surely simple phone call saying, actually, if you don't move it by the close of play today, we will confiscate it, take it away, or do something of the like. But surely, we must be able to do something. It is against law and it is against highways because it causes a distraction. And they just keep moving them from one place to the next constantly and just attaching them to street furniture. So, I think my previous question, which wasn't answered, was about do we have adequate resource to be able, and I appreciate that probably went on a bit, but do we have adequate resource to be able to deal with all of the issues that this plan raises? Because there's a lot in here, and I think it's worth understanding what the limitations might be upon the service. Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of the trailers and the signs, yes, it's disappointing to hear that you got the response you did when you previously reported this, because I would expect someone to take that on board and to contact the perpetrators. And yes, we do have powers if there is an immediate issue on the highway to remove that article, take it back to our depot and say, if you like it back, you can come and collect it. So if you do have that sort of barrier, again, let us know. Did you want me to talk about enforcement, Graham, or did you want to...
I'll take it if you like. I'll take it. Thank you, Jonathan. You're quite right, and I can think of an example of the trailer where we have taken action. So I'm sorry you got that response. Jonathan's quite right. You shouldn't have got that response because there is action, and there is action we can take and have taken in the past. I don't think there's an enforcement body in the country who would say they've got enough resources to deal with the powers that they have and the enforcement they could take. So we would always benefit from more resources in all of our enforcement activity across the council. I don't mean to speak for my other colleagues, but certainly for enforcement activity that we could undertake, we could always take more resources and utilise it effectively. But of course, we all know that we've got limited budgets. And therefore we have to work within our means. What we absolutely must do, and obviously seek to try and do all the time, is to work as efficiently and as effectively as we possibly can. So it's about continually improving those processes, ensuring we've got the staff that are carrying out those processes effectively, and doing as much as we possibly can with the means we've got. But I would always welcome more, but I'm also well aware of the pressures across the council and in other services and my own.
Councillor Eglin.
Yeah, mine's going back to following on from Councillor Howell's with the utility company. As we've got a decent plan in place now with highways from the council side of things, how are we holding utility companies to account whether a reinstatement fails inspection, and what's the consequences, what we're following up on, and how we're holding them accountable to that? And if they keep doing it, what are we doing to basically tell them you're not doing it again?
Yeah, I can pick that one up again. It's a good point. So, I mean, this isn't detailed in the plan in detail. Our street works team, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, They are responsible for supervising activities carried out by statutory undertakers like Anglian Water or BT or Cadent for the gas. They have to reinstate the highway to the correct specification that's outlined by national guidance and code of practice. If there are failures, again, the permit and streetwork system that we operate allows us to effectively fine them and make them come back and put the reinstatement back correctly. So we do have the tools to deal with that. We have got the staff.
Are we holding them to account now? Because it's one thing having the powers and it's one thing using it.
Yeah, we do. So we've got, in Northamptonshire, we've got 4 streetworks inspectors who cover the whole of Northamptonshire, and they will deal with all of the activities in their patch. So they're on the ground looking at activities that are going on a daily basis. They are field officers, if you like. They can't be there every time the reinstatement's happening, but they do before, during and after checks. So we have got robust processes in place, and we do have the means to fine and ask them to come back if there are issues. So if there are specifics again, please let us know, because we can obviously follow up. And a lot of these companies, they do use local supply chain companies. So it might not be BT doing the work, it might be someone that they've employed, and there may be some problematic people that we want to kind of check up on more often than others, I guess. So.
Councillor Baker.
Sorry, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jonathan. Can I just follow up on that? This wasn't actually why I was going to intervene next, but following on from Councillor Eglin's question. So just to be clear then, if a utility company is engaged in works on NNC highways, let's just say within the boundaries of NNC, there is a streetworks team that will go out after those works are scheduled to be completed and check that that highway is reinstated back to the condition that it was in before the work started. And that streetworks team will also confirm that no road signage has been left after those works have been completed. Is that the case?
That's what that team does, yes.
I'm sorry. I take what you say at face value. I genuinely struggle to accept that's the case, if I could put it that way.
Why, with all due respect, Councillor, why?
I can think of a number of examples in my ward right now where there is road signage being left for a long time. And actually, I just checked on one specific example on Google Maps, which is probably out of date, but I am at this site, drive past it every single day of the week. There is at least 3, if not 4, road signs that have been left there for a long time.
If you can let us know, it does come down to the point really with Councillor Howells was asking is, and as Jonathan indicated, we've got processes to check these, but can we check every single site? No, realistically we can, not with the level of activity across the network.
But Jonathan just said that you check after every single work.
He didn't say every single. I'm quite happy for us to review, but I didn't hear him say every single. He said there's a process in place.
They can't make it to every single one, but they do go there beginning, middle and end.
Yeah, so there are points at which we will check up on to sites and suppliers. We don't go to every single site beginning, before, during and end, because we don't have, going back to the point, we wouldn't have the resources to do that. You know how much activity is across the network. We wouldn't have the resources to do that. So we do checks on sites, yes, but not every single site. We wouldn't. Some of them would only be there for a day, so we wouldn't even have the staff to be able to go to the individual sites, which are only there for a number of hours.
Okay.
So if you can let us know on your particular concerns, then please do, and we can arrange to sort it out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think unless others have understood the responses differently, I think you've just clarified that they are ad hoc checks.
It's a sample.
Yeah,
it's a sample. Yeah.
Chair, sorry, Councillor Baker, can I just jump in, just very quickly, Chair? So my examples, Graham, are not 24-hour little jobs. They're quite significant pieces of work. So I wouldn't mind, and I fully understand that we don't dispatch somebody to check every highways change. That seems fairly reasonable to me. For significant pieces of work, including the example that I've given on Pitwell Road, I'm absolutely amazed if somebody hasn't been start, middle and end checking, and I fully suspect somebody has. What I think we're saying, and I don't think you're agreeing or accepting, which is where the concern is that we're dispatching highways officers to go and check, and they're not seeing what we're seeing, and that for me would be a concern in your position as the head of the area. So I think the problem is not the fact that we're expecting every site to be checked, but when they're actually being dispatched to check and they're not noticing what we're seeing and examples we're giving, something's not right.
It's through you, Chair. I totally agree with you, Councillor House. If what you just described is happening, that's a concern to me, and we'll look into that.
Surely this isn't the first time that any elected member has talked to you about the stuff that's being left, either by utility companies, our subcontractors, or heaven forbid Kia, because that happens as well. Surely this is not the first time you're hearing this.
So we've got processes in place to try and avoid this situation arising. If this situation is arising, then we need to check on those processes and improve on them, which is why I'm very interested in your Pipwell Road example. I'm certainly very interested in Councillor Baker's example, because we can go back and see what checks did happen. So if we check that somebody did go to these sites and sign it off as being completed, but didn't spot the things that you've just outlined, which I agree with you they should have done, then there are questions to be asked. What I don't know sitting here is whether or not they went to these sites, because as I'm being honest, we can't go to every single site. You're right, the description you've made of Pipwell does sound like, and again, I need to check this, but it sounds like the sort of site we should have been at. So I'll be interested to know what happened there. But I can't say, because we don't, that we go to every single site. But when we do go to a site and sign it off, you're right, it should be clear of detritus and equipment. It should be reinstated to, as Jonathan explained, to how it was beforehand and to those standards we would expect. So we can check that our current processes are working properly, and that's what we should do. And that is the concern I leave with the reports that have come through this evening.
Thank you for the response, Graham. Appreciate that. If I can just, as a general, just make sure we keep on track with the actual agenda item, which is the network management plan. There's obviously concerns and there's obviously things that it would appear aren't being done to the standard that our residents and us as councillors would want it to be done. But there's a process in place for that of raising members' inquiries or raising issues on the Fix My Street. Let the officers then deal with those issues, and as Graham said, if it's a site that they have inspected, then there can be follow-up duties to be done. We've raised this point quite substantially now that there's issues. So if we can move on to anything else, I'd appreciate that. We'll go to Councillor Dale, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be honest, I have been known to pull a road close sign out of a hedge now and again, because they do come in quite handy, because every year I close the road Kingsley Avenue in Kettering for Halloween. This year we had 3,845 people come through, which brings me on to planned events and street functions, point 6.5, and the temporary traffic regulation orders. That was a good segue there. I was wondering if the special events, because the government has issued guidance on play streets, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and it's about temporary traffic TTROs that can be repeated easily. As somebody that's done the road closure for 5 years, it's not an easy process. I've done it a few times now, so I can just sort of copy and paste the same form. But I remember originally it was very difficult. So for residents to be able to do this, and I know lots of residents did, especially for the Jubilee and things like that, it's quite a difficult process to go through, especially if you want to repeat these. And I know the government has issued guidance about how councils can sort of effect a play streets policy, if you like, to make it easier for repeat closures that don't require as much cost. Just wondered if that was worth including. Thank you.
Yes, so obviously we do want to make it as easy as possible for people to make these applications, and certainly the repeat applications. So there's more we can do on that. I totally agree. We should do that as the network management plan specifically talks about Jubilee events, and certainly with these national events, we have made it as easy as possible for people to navigate that process. And in these circumstances as well, there's not a fee to pay. You do have to pay in some circumstances, but when they tend to be community events and certainly of national significance, there isn't a fee associated with it, which is great because it encourages communities to organise these things. So there's more that we can make, more that we can do to make it easy. Then very happy to take that feedback, because we all support these community events. It's great that you have such a good turnout for your event, and the many other really valuable community events as well. So happy to take some feedback on that.
I have a question.
Hang on a second. Councillor Howell, please.
Thank you. Sorry, just shut me a moment. Graham, thank you. Do appreciate, obviously, we are slightly drifting outside of the remit of this, but while we've got you here, we seem to be trying to tackle all these different issues. Can I just clarify something with you? Am I right in thinking that should a utilities company fix the road and within a 2-year period that should deteriorate or drop, do we have the right to go back and ask them to fix it again? So it's really important that we keep an eye on these repairs, and if they are within the 2 years, that's at a cost to the utility company as opposed to a cost to NNC, and that is something that we really should be making the most of, really, because that saves taxpayers money, doesn't it? Thank you.
Thank you. You're quite right. Thank you for raising it, and you're quite right. It's 2 years, isn't it?
I think it's 2 years.
I'm very confident it's 2 years. Yes, it's as you say. If their reinstatement fails within 2 years, they need to go back and fix it.
And on that point, I can confirm Executive for Highways, Councillor McGiffin, is going round and making a lot of inspections on jobs that are being done, pothole fixes, repairs. He's going around spending a lot of hours on making sure that they're up to the standard that we want them to be up to, and then taking notes of where they're fixed so that they can be monitored over that period of time as well.
With all respect, Chair, should that not be the officer's job?
It's also the executive teams to follow up and make sure that officers are doing what we want them to be doing.
Yes, but we need to ensure that also our officers are following up as well, rather than somebody taking on that responsibility. I'd be very mindful that, it's admirable doing it, but we don't want to detract from what should be done as normal day-to-day business. Thank you.
Councillor Davies?
I agree. Road closures. I had Earthlinborough High Street on the Earthlinborough councillor. When they shut the high street for Christmas lights or other events, they send all the traffic up College Street and Victoria Street. I had a call from a constituent who said that when they shut the road off, he'll have cars, because his front door is onto the pavement. The traffic's so bad that he's opened his front door and there's a wing by his front door. Cars are the congestion. So he suggested could cones go up there, but if cones go up there to prevent curb access, it would just cause more havoc. Does the council actually look at, when they do a road closure, they look at the diversions and the impact that it will have on the area? Because it's significant down there.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that particular case. Yes, it's a short answer. So yes, that's exactly the sort of thing that we consider when we get these applications through, is what the diversion route is, what the traffic management arrangements are, how that traffic management is going to be put in place and managed, if it's been done, obviously, by suitably qualified and trained people. Some cases can be volunteers, depending on the nature of the closure, but yes, those are exactly the sorts of things that we look at.
So that's probably prior to the event. Do they actually look at it during the event?
To some extent, I mean, again, we don't attend every event, so it will depend on the nature of the event, longevity of the event.
They will pencil that in then,
But-
that they actually attend next time and see the congestion, the havoc it causes.
But certainly getting the feedback is very valuable, yeah, and it will. And go back to Councillor Dell's point, that will influence the decision for the next event as well, and that's exactly the sort of feedback that we take on board when, if we get a similar application or the same application in future years or whatever, that's exactly the sort of consideration we would make.
Just got a couple of points for myself. If I can raise a couple of, it's more technical on the report itself, more so than anything. Looking at section 3 on the report, at the main part of section 3, you've got listed in there that section 3.32 is the hierarchies. But in actual fact, 3.32 is the impact of extreme heat. So it looks like it's just been a slight typo or mislink in there. If you could just double check that for us. Appreciate it. And then there was one more, again, technical. If I just bring it up. 3.3.3 is the hierarchies. 2 seconds, my laptop's not going. Can I just clarify? You've got within the table, you've got the main distributor. So it's the carriage maintenance hierarchy, the main distributor column, and the detailed description. And you've got the secondary distributor road and the detailed description, and they're both exactly the same detailed description. Is that a mistaken copy and paste, or are they meant to be exactly the same? If they're meant to be the same, why would they be separated like that? Thank you for both of those. Did anyone else have any? Councillor Dowd, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is. I was just wondering if you could review uses of the word accident throughout the document. Accident implies something that was blameless or unpredictable, and the police, national highways, and journalists are advised to use collisions, crashes, or incidents which are more neutral. Just a note there.
Okay, if no one else at the moment, I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Baker. Couple more for myself. Just again, it's just technicalities, I think. Some of them. 4.5.1, the lighting. Again, you've got primary shopping areas and secondary shopping areas. But then they've both got the same standard of lighting, CE, was it CE5 or CS? I can't read my own writing now. So again, it's just to wonder, why have you got them separated, primary shopping and secondary shopping, if they've got the same standard of lighting? Can it not just be shopping area? Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Something completely brand new, and that's road adoption. In section 11, page, I think it's 68, sorry, of the plan. And it may be a question just for my benefit, if not others, and that's how your team fits in and aligns with perhaps planning enforcement, but also what I understand to be development liaison management in the context of road adoption. We have an example in my ward in Wellingborough, Prescott Close, where adoption by the council has been outstanding for 9 years now. I recognise that this was a case that was inherited from another authority. I won't need to say how concerned residents have been and frustrated they are. I know that at least one family has moved away and suffered a significant deterioration in their house value as a result of the developers downing tools 9 years ago, and adoption still outstanding by the council. I'm in touch with a development liaison manager in the council. Doesn't quite strike me as the right title for somebody to be dealing with this sort of case. I would have thought it would have been planning enforcement. But it's really just how you fit into that in relation to your department, where we have a situation like this. It's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly concerning. There seems to be numerous obstacles in the way of adoption. I understand the concerns. That doesn't help residents. Everybody just wants to find a solution to this. I'm just wondering how that works from a cross-departmental perspective within the council. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yes, I am very aware of that unfortunate case. We're very aware of it. As you say, it's long-running and very complex and complicated. You're quite right. This is a perfect example, actually, of being a unitary authority has the benefits that the two teams work more closely together than perhaps they did previously, because, of course, previously the planning enforcement was part of the planning decision, and the planning enforcement was part of a lower-tier authority, the borough in this case, and the county council was responsible for the highways and the adoption element. And whilst they did communicate, I think I know the communication is better now. So I think I'm pretty confident in saying that the highways development liaison manager has confirmed to you that he is in touch with planning enforcement, and there is engagement there between the two teams, and that is the case in that particular case. It is ongoing. I spoke to him about it as recently as last week.
Councillor Dell.
Thank you, Chair. Just moving on to road safety on 9.1. Some sobering stats here. The year up to June 25, there were 40 people, this is Northamptonshire by the way, 40 people killed, 430 seriously injured, and 1,740 casualties. The road safety, the Northamptonshire Safer Roads Alliance strategy, I followed that link in this document to our website, and it mentions Carcraft, My Pink Trainers, Road Safety Heroes, Too Fast, Too Soon, and First Gear as programmes of education. All of those have a contact email, which is kearwsp.co.uk, and all of those were last updated in 2022. So I'm wondering what our education programme looks like now, and if any of those are still in existence. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, yes. So we do have a road safety service. It is delivered through Kier, through the contract with Kier. We've got some road safety experts in that service who do a wonderful job, actually, on a range of different outreach programs like you've mentioned there. They also analyse accidents, collisions that have happened, and they work with the police to review after those accidents have happened, and most tragically, the fatal ones, they look at very carefully for obvious reasons, and it's always exceedingly sad to hear those reports, and they all get reported to me and my colleagues. It's always a very sobering moment for us all. Without remembering all of the ones that you've just listed out there, I'm confident a lot of them are still active. So My Pink Trainers is a brilliant, very impactful film and programme we roll out to school children. Carcraft is an excellent programme we provide for younger drivers around how to control a car in skidding, for instance, but just being aware of speed and peer pressure. And sort of things that you need to be thinking about when you're younger. We also have a programme for older people as well, who are perhaps, their circumstances are changing, their abilities are changing, and they need to be mindful of how that might affect their driving ability as well. So we have a range of programmes we continue to roll out as well. I'll check the page. I'll see that, if it hasn't been updated to 2022, that's either because nothing's actually changed, it doesn't need to be updated, or it needs to be updated. But either way, we can check that and see. But we do have a very active road safety programme, which does a great deal of good work. And the speed limit policy, thank you. Speed limit policy is mentioned here as part of the road safety work that we do as well, and we intend to bring that forward in 2026 as well for review through this committee and then on to executive as well. As I said, we work very closely with the police on any proposed or requested changes from members of the public, local members, etc., on changes to speed limit, up or down.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. I hope those programmes are still in existence. As part of the strategy, should we have we'd like to get to 0 road deaths? I think that's achievable because they're preventable, really. Thank you.
I'll come to you a second. Just quickly for myself, 4.10 in the report, drainage responsibilities. Obviously, NNC must ensure highways are properly drained to prevent surface water. There's a section in there about that. Obviously, it's impossible to avoid all flooding, especially under heavy rain. It's never going to happen. But where repeat flooding, it keeps coming up, and there are many areas where it does. Can you give us a bit of detail about how
regularly that's reviewed, and how this policy is going to help to try and address those common areas where we see it happen on a regular basis.
So, obviously, Care deliver a wide range of these highway services for us. They do have a specialist, a drainage team within their service. We have a cyclical programme of drainage where we'll clean gullies regularly, clean grips regularly, do the basic maintenance to our drainage assets. On top of that, we have an allocation of our annual plan budget put aside for drainage improvements. And what the Care do through their asset management approach is they will take data from various sources, whether that be from inspections, from inquiries that have come in through Fix My Streets or through members or from parish councils. They will collect all that data together, look at the priorities, and they will develop schemes and solutions where we do have flooding hotspots. We're currently developing our latest iteration of the annual plan. There's quite a section there of drainage improvement schemes which have come through that process. So when that comes forward for members to look at, you will be able to see drainage improvement schemes that are in across the whole area. But we do pick those up through the annual plan process.
Excellent, that's great. Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. So I suppose I'm interested really in what you would call a categorisation of roads, and maybe this falls into the adoption of new roads section. So, for instance, there's a road in Raunds, you call it a road, it's 3.5 metres wide, that for the 18 years that I've been there has been part of a footpath. But miraculously, once a planning application comes ahead, it's now been categorised as an adopted public highway, despite the fact that it links through directly to 2 footpaths that merge on that piece of road. But that's only come about because of a planning application that's come to open an access onto this very, very narrow road. And when we're talking about public safety, does that not sort of take precedence over these type of roads when we're looking at how the road is categorised? I'm finding that quite difficult to understand. As I say, previously 18 years I've been there, it's been classed as nothing other than just a slightly wider than a footpath piece of road, and yet it's immediately recategorised when a planning application comes in and to allow access. I was just wondering if you could clarify that. And the safety aspect is really my major concern on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Safety is a major concern for us, and the vast majority of the policy and plans we have in place is orientated towards safety and reducing safety, and therefore we manage on a risk-based approach. I don't obviously know that particular spot, that location, trying to sort of go through my mind of what I do know of Ron's, but it's not coming to mind, so I can't comment on that. The categorisation, I don't know the circumstances, but I'd be very surprised if the categorisation has changed. The local understanding might have changed, but the legal categorisation of that section of the highway probably hasn't changed. Legalities around the highways network are complicated. Ownership rights are different to whether or not it's been allocated as a highway, and the nature of that highway and what legal category it sits in and access rights are also complicated as well, as you know, with public rights of way and footpaths being different and roadway being different again. So I can't comment, but it is complicated. So it wouldn't surprise me if perhaps people were not aware because they never had to, but when a planning application comes forward, that's the point in which an investigation happens and the legal nature of that particular site has been confirmed. And that might be a surprise to people, but it probably hasn't changed.
Thank you. I mean, there was a letter stating that they had recategorised it subject to that, but maybe we can take it offline if that's fine. Thank you.
Just a couple more for me, if I can. Section 8.1.8 in the report, school streets. I was just wondering, do we have any within NNC at the moment?
I'm hesitating because I can't remember. We introduced a temporary one in Wellingborough. It was actually introduced in the county council days as a pilot, as a trial. It's certainly not operating as it was first operated under a trial. To the extent to which it operates at all, I honestly, I can't remember. It has been talked about recently in general terms because there is interest in introducing school streets being raised to us by members. They can be very effective. I'm sure you can immediately imagine there's lots of things to consider when introducing a school street. You can simply push the problem somewhere else. You can have an unintended consequence for local residents who might be impacted by it. So there's lots of things to consider. We also, of course, need the active engagement of the school to play an active part in the management of the school street. So very keen to engage with local members and communities and schools on opportunities, but there are quite a lot of things to consider when introducing them.
Councillor Dell.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I go into my question, we'll add that there are lots and lots of benefits to school streets, not just that it's a lot safer for children because there's no cars right outside, less air pollution. They also get to play, be a bit healthy as they go out. Onto my question, it was about roundabout sponsorship. So, yeah. So it appears that we contract that out to a company called, I followed the link, which was CP Media, which is now a company called Outdo. Obviously, most of the roundabouts that I've seen locally have local companies advertising on them, which is great. Is there a specific policy with them around that? I presume we wouldn't have national chains or like McDonald's or whatever like that. But it's good to see there's local organisations on that. But does the council get any money from that, or is that just to the company that does it?
We do have a contract in place with CP Media. They manage those roundabouts that are underneath the sponsorship programme, so there's a cost saving to us, so that's part of the commercial arrangement. We do get a fixed fee every year. Can't remember what the figure is. Have known it in the past, just can't remember it right now. Happy to confirm it, but there is a fixed fee that we get from them as a result of that. They then keep the revenue from the advertising. So if you like, the commercial arrangement is if they don't manage to drum up any advertising, we're not affected. If they drum up lots and lots, then they get the financial benefit of that. We hold not only do they need planning permission for it, so they have to go through the planning process, which they do, but we also hold the ability to, if you like, veto. We wouldn't do it on the nature of the organisation, but we would do it on the nature of the advert if we found it was inappropriate. And there have been, without wanting to go into details, there have been some slogans in the past that have been suggested, and we didn't think it was appropriate for the local authority to be associated with that sort of nuance. So we have vetoed them.
One more for me, please. 9.1.4, red routes. I was really interested to read this. Prior to reading this, my incorrect assumption was how pointless red routes are. In terms of seeing them out on the road, you just see the sign saying, red route, do not speed. It's almost as though promoting speeding elsewhere is okay, because it's not a red route. But that's not the case, and I was really interested to read this particular part. Is there a method in place for us as councillors, obviously through the members' inquiry we could do it, but to have specific roads designated as red routes? The one I'm specifically thinking about within North Northamptonshire, I don't know whether you know it specifically, but the Pytchley, Broughton crossroads, the number of fatalities on that set of crossroads is beyond acceptable. It's well signposted. I know the road itself has been changed from give way to a stop, and the signs have been are crystal clear to see on approach, but it's still not enough. It's still not doing enough. So specifically on that, what else is being done maybe about that route? Can it be designated as a red route? Is there value in doing that? Because then the road itself will be monitored much more closely. If you could, please.
Yeah, I can pick that up for you. So, yeah, through Kier again, through the road safety team there, and through the speed limit review panels, which they manage and chair for us, which are operated jointly with the police and Kier and Highways staff. They will review the red routes on a regular basis to see whether they're still relevant, whether further measures are needed, whether different routes need to be included in what is covered currently by red routes. So if there are areas that you want to consider, then I would just let us know, either through the parish council or directly, and we can consider it. They tend to be main strategic routes on the network, and obviously they would have to fall into certain criteria in terms of the statistics and what's happening on that particular part of the network. But we do review them regularly, and if you do have some suggestions or questions about what we're currently doing, then let us know.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Howell.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. May I also include the A45 from Thrapston to Raunds, because that at the moment seems like every single week, at least once or twice a week, that road is closed due to significant accidents there. So please can we look at that one also? Thank you.
Councillor Dell, and then we'll be looking to bring this to a bit of a close shortly, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Obviously, the government occasionally issues local transport notes, but I didn't notice that there was anything in the document about taking those on board. For example, the last one was the bus user priority local transport note in 2024, and the one before that was on cycle infrastructure design. Is that guidance? Is there something in there that needs to say that we'll take on board local transport notes?
Yeah, I take the point you make. We can think about where it might sit, whether it's best sitting in here or whether it's the local transport plan. I mean, you're right. There are guidance notes that come out. There's changes in regulations. There's many legislative, formal legislation, obviously, that we need to take into place, regulation changes, but also informal guidance. We would take all of it into account anyway, but we'll consider whether it's useful to place that into the network management plan or whether it's better to sit somewhere else. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Davis, and then I think we're wrapping up.
I had an email from another constituent in Little Addingtons. There was a Meadowview development, which is now called Howard's Way. Part of the agreement was that there would be traffic calming installed before anyone moved in to any of the dwellings. It's a very populated estate now. No traffic calming. Now, I've got all the information, references. How would that be reviewed?
So I'm aware of this case. We've been engaging with the parish council about it for several years now, in terms of trying to find a practical a way in which that island can be lit. That's the main sticking point there. We'll continue to engage with the parish council and trying to find a resolution with them.
In weeks, months, more years?
It depends how those conversations go, because both parties have a part to play.
It does seem that the planning applications get the houses, but we don't get the traffic calming.
The traffic calming was put in as part of either I think it was a condition of the planning application. It didn't come forward for reasons that I'm aware and happy to speak to you outside of this, but we are in touch with the parish council about it.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's covered most points. I can't see anyone else particularly wanting to raise anything else at the moment, so I think we'll try and bring this to a close. So the officer recommendation is the Place Environment Scrutiny Committee, A, note the contents of this report and the updated network management plan. B, consider any areas that members would wish to discuss, ask questions of and provide feedback of officers, which we've done. And C, endorse progression to the executive for approval. However, having obviously had this discussion that we've had tonight, we've got several members here that have requested for information in relation to EV charging and enforcement. With that in mind, could I seek a proposer and a seconder that the Place Environment Scrutiny Committee invite officers to provide an update to members of the committee in relation to the progress and key performance indicators associated with electric vehicle charging, infrastructure and enforcement across the highway sector? So, Councillor Eglin's happy to propose and Councillor Baker second, yeah?
So when you talk about enforcement, is that general enforcement, not just on the EV sector?
Yeah, general enforcement.
Thank you, yeah,
to cover everything that we were discussing, yeah. You're happy with that? Okay, so we... Yeah, so we're going to vote if we're happy. We've got pros and seconds for that. So,
Sorry, Chair, can I
come into George?
I knew there would be a moment for me to speak in this meeting. Can I just clarify, is that officers coming back with a report or a written note for scrutiny?
It's proposed in a second. Do you want that to come back as a report or do you say?
I'd be quite happy with a report.
Yeah, either or.
Yeah, we're happy with either or report, whichever you choose is going to give us the best information to take that further.
So officers will prefer the steer from members, I would suggest. So if you want officers to come back with a report and present and be scrutinised in person, then we can do that.
It's more formal.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
On that basis, then we'll take a vote on the actual proposals, including that additional one, unless before we do that, anyone had any additional ones they would like to propose. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I did just have one point before I indicate my support for the draft report, but that's subject to, I think, Graham, you indicated that you'd go away and consider the wording in the quiet lane designation. So it's just subject to that caveat. If I could push the boundary, if you could do that in liaison with the Greenway Project Officer, I think that'd be really helpful. Thank you, Chair.
So in that case, we'll vote on the proposals as per the recommendations. All those in favour, please. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. I close that agenda item. One more item then, just to, two more items just to cover off quickly. The Place Environment Scrutiny Committee work programme. We asked members to note the attached work programme for the committee. And on that note, that's everything. So there'd be no... we'll come to Councillor Howell quickly.
Thank you, Chair. So I note the work programme I stated. When if you remember when the cultural strategy came forward, we were talking about the responsibility of the LVET, the Local Visitor Economy Partnership, and the governance around that. Although the LVEP is an external body, it falls under NNC as the responsible financial body, and I think we did ask if the governance around the LVEP could come back to this committee, and I would really like to see that as part of the work programme going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll add that. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. And I had 2 points in relation to the future work programme. The first is on the bus service improvement plan that's scheduled for the 3rd of March. Can I ask if that will consider the recent adoption of the Bus Services Act and how the application of that Act can be better applied, or at least can be implemented across Northamptonshire in terms of the controls that it puts back in the hands of local authorities? I think that would be quite helpful. My second question was in relation to delivery of the carbon management plan. We don't have a date scheduled for that, but if I recall correctly, when that plan was considered by this committee a few months ago, a working group was going to be established to review and monitor progress of the council's work towards net zero, which is now 2050. I haven't heard anything in the context of the establishment of that working group. So if any information can be provided in that regard, I think that'd be quite helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so on the second one, the carbon management plan, it's subject to members, so members will be contacting, we're taking that further. That was agreed, so we will take that on further.